Thales of Miletus. Thales of Miletus is often regarded as the first philosopher in Western history. He was one of the seven sages of Greece and played a crucial role in shaping early scientific and philosophical thought. Thales was a rationalist and rejected mythological explanations for natural phenomena and sought rational, scientific reasons. He proposed that water is the fundamental substance from which everything in the universe originates. His ideas marked the beginning of natural philosophy, influencing later thinkers like Anaximander and Anaximenes. He believed the earth was a flat disk floating on water, an early attempt to explain the nature of the world scientifically. Thales of Miletus is an essential figure in history, symbolizing the transition from myth to reason in human thought. Anaximander. Anaximander was a student of Thales of Miletus and one of the first thinkers to propose scientific explanations for the origins of the universe, life, and natural phenomena. He rejected Thales's idea that water was the fundamental element of the universe. Instead, he proposed the concept of a pyrrhon, an infinite, boundless substance that is eternal and the source of all things. This idea was one of the earliest attempts to explain the universe without relying on mythology. He also suggested that early humans were born from fish-like ancestors, making him one of the first philosophers to propose an evolutionary idea. He proposed that the earth was cylindrical rather than flat, and attempted to explain thunder, lightning, and earthquakes as natural occurrences rather than acts of the gods. Anaximander was a true pioneer, shaping early ideas about the universe, earth, and life. Heraclitus. Heraclitus introduced the idea that the universe is in a constant state of transformation, as noted in his famous saying, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." This is studied as his doctrine of flux. This idea profoundly influenced later philosophers, including Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics. He also proposed in his Unity of Opposites that opposites are interconnected and necessary for balance. Day and night, life and death, war and peace all exist in harmony. He saw conflict as a driving force in nature and human life. Heraclitus also introduced the concept of logos, a universal principle that governs everything. He believed that while the world appears chaotic, it is ordered by reason, or logos. This idea later influenced Stoic philosophy and Christian theology. Pythagoras. Pythagoras believed that numbers were the fundamental principle of reality. Unlike earlier philosophers who saw elements such as water, air, and fire as the basis of existence, Pythagoras argued that everything could be explained through numerical relationships. He believed that the laws of nature were mathematical. Thus, he assigned spiritual meanings to numbers: one, or monad, unity, the origin of all things; two, or dyad, duality, opposition or opposites. For example, light and dark, male and female. Three, or triad, harmony and completeness, the past, present, and future. Four, or tetrad, order and stability, which refers to the seasons and elements. 10, or decad, the perfect number, symbolizing universal wholeness. Protagoras. Man is the measure of all things, of things that they are, and of things that are not, that they are not. This is Protagoras' most famous saying. It implies that there is no absolute truth, and everything depends on individual perception. Knowledge is limited to human experience, and we cannot access an objective reality beyond our own senses. He was also one of the earliest philosophers to express agnosticism. He did not deny the existence of gods, but he doubted humans could ever know the truth about them. Unlike philosophers who believed in divine or natural moral laws, Protagoras argued that morality is a human construct, and thus challenged the idea of absolute truth, and laid the foundation for modern relativist and democratic thought. Socrates. Socrates' philosophy focused on ethics, knowledge, and critical thinking, emphasizing that true wisdom comes from recognizing one's ignorance. He believed that knowledge was the ultimate good, and that pursuing knowledge was vital to living a good, virtuous life. He argued that good and evil were absolute, and that only through pursuing knowledge could we learn the difference. For example, evil actions result from a lack of understanding, not from a deliberate desire to harm others. Socrates also developed a method of dialogue-based inquiry, now called the Socratic method. It involved asking probing questions to challenge assumptions, engaging in rational debate to expose contradictions, and encouraging people to think for themselves rather than accept authority. Plato. Plato believed that the physical world is an imperfect copy of a higher, unchanging reality called the world of forms. The forms are eternal, perfect, and unchanging, unlike the physical world, which is temporary and flawed. Every object we see, chairs, trees, humans, is an imperfect copy of its perfect form. The highest form is the form of the good, which represents truth, beauty, and justice. In the Republic, Plato describes a famous metaphor, the allegory of the cave, to explain human ignorance and the path to true knowledge. Prisoners are chained inside a cave, only seeing shadows on the wall, believing them to be reality. One prisoner escapes and sees the real world, realizing the shadows were illusions. If he returns to free the others, they reject him, preferring the familiar shadows. The cave represents ignorance, and the shadows symbolize false beliefs. The sun represents the ultimate truth. The escaped prisoner is the philosopher, who seeks true wisdom and tries to educate others, often facing resistance. In the Republic, Plato describes an ideal state where the most intelligent and virtuous, like the philosophers, rule. He believed that democracy is flawed because the masses are often ignorant and easily misled, and that justice exists when each class performs its role without interfering with others. Aristotle. Aristotle built on Plato's ideas, but offers a more structured and empirical approach. He introduced a framework for understanding why things exist and change. Every object or event has four causes. Material cause, what something is made of. For example, a statue is made of marble. A formal cause, the shape or structure of the thing. For example, the statue takes the shape of a person. Efficient cause, what brings it into existence. For example, the sculptor chisels the statue. Final cause, the purpose or goal. For example, the statue is meant to honor a hero. The final cause is particularly important because Aristotle believed that everything in nature has a purpose. Aristotle's ethics centers on the concept of virtue, or excellence, arguing that a good life is achieved through developing virtuous character traits. He believed that the ultimate goal of human life is eudaimonia, often translated as happiness or flourishing, which is achieved through living a virtuous life and engaging in rational activity. Aristotle's political philosophy explores different forms of government, arguing that the best form is a polity, or constitutional government, that balances the interests of the majority and the minority. His famous saying, "Man is a political animal," stated that humans are naturally social and political beings, and that living in a community or society is essential for flourishing. Epicurus. Epicurus believed the goal of life is to attain happiness, which he defined as freedom from pain and fear. This concept is termed as ataraxia, or inner tranquility. He argued that pleasure is the highest good. He taught that excessive desires lead to anxiety and suffering. True happiness comes from moderation, self-sufficiency, and intellectual pleasures like friendship and philosophy. He stated, "If you wish to make a man wealthy, do not give him more money, but reduce his desires." He taught 4 key remedies to achieve tranquility. Do not fear the gods. They exist, but they don't care about humans. Do not fear death. It is simply the absence of sensation. What is good is easy to obtain. Basic needs are simple to fulfill. What is bad is easy to endure. Pain is either temporary or manageable. Diogenes. Diogenes was the most famous Cynic philosopher and believed that people should reject materialism, status, and conventional morality, and instead live like animals, following only their natural instincts. For Diogenes, civilization made people miserable by creating unnecessary desires like wealth, power, and fame. He thought people should return to a simple, self-sufficient lifestyle. Diogenes actively mocked and rejected all social customs. He ate and relieved himself in public, arguing that if eating was natural, why hide other bodily functions? He insulted powerful people, including Plato and Alexander the Great. He carried a lamp in broad daylight, claiming he was quote-unquote looking for an honest man, mocking human corruption. His extreme behavior was meant to shock people into questioning their values. He inspired Stoicism, which later softened his radical ideas and remains a symbol of anti-materialism and radical freedom. Zeno of Citium. Zeno of Citium was a Hellenistic philosopher and the founder of Stoicism. He taught that happiness, or eudaimonia, comes from living according to reason and nature. Nature is governed by reason, or logos, so humans should align their actions with it. Emotions like fear, anger, and desire come from false judgments. True happiness comes from accepting what we cannot control. This teaching is known as the dichotomy of control. Some things are in our control: our thoughts, actions, and reactions. Most things are not. Other people, fortune, and external events. To find peace, we must focus on what we can control and accept everything else calmly. His ideas shaped later Roman Stoics like Seneca, Epicurus, and Marcus Aurelius, and later influenced Christianity, modern psychology, and self-help philosophies of the modern age.